I feel as though we have reached a dividing line with this season's Carolina Hurricanes. And this is my observation from, it's not just last night. I think for the most part, their offense has been somewhat anemic. And I'm not just talking about scoring goals. To me, the statistics are lying to us about how many scoring chances they had. According to the statistics, the data from last night, the Hurricanes should have scored a lot more goals. Right. Well, they scored none, so a lot more. Right. Yeah. A lot more is certainly relative. They had some chances last night. First period, I thought there were a couple of really good opportunities. Early in the second period, Seth Jarvis was on an odd man rush on the right side, and maybe he waited too long. Maybe he should have passed it. I actually think he should have shot. It didn't go. Good save from Sam Montembeault, who played very well last night. Jackson Blake had a couple of chances. Jack Roslovic inexplicably missed the net wide from tight quarters twice. So there were chances, but what there weren't was pressure. Carolina looked disjointed last night. They looked, especially in the defensive part of the ice at times, undetailed. Like, Rod likes to use the term there but not there. That was more a case in Toronto. But the case on the third goal, which was a power play goal, was Carolina knowing that they needed to score because they were down 2-0, trying to cheat for offense, and they left themselves exposed. So that left Nick Suzuki open, and his shot easily beat Frederik Andersen, which to me was the worst goal he allowed of the night. Carolina's goaltending, this is going to sound weird. It hasn't been bad, but it hasn't been good enough. And right now, the Hurricanes, because the offense isn't there, they need to keep these games to 1 or 2 goals to give them a chance. And they're not doing it. And therein lies the problem of 3-5-1 since the acquisition of Rantanen and Taylor Hall. All right, now, for some perspective. The Hurricanes are one of the best teams in the entire NHL. It hasn't looked great lately, but that is a fact. And that is not only this year, though over the last, let's say, 2 months, they've slipped. And I think they are a second-tier Stanley Cup contender. I don't care what Vegas says. And I've said it at the time. Even last year, when we were all very optimistic, I didn't see them as quite the upper crust. All right? With 24 games to play, they are still on target for a 7th consecutive playoff appearances. Only 4 other teams in the NHL have a streak that long. Colorado and Tampa Bay, 7 going on 8. Toronto and Boston, 8 going on 9. Bruins are probably not going to make the playoffs this year. Florida and Edmonton are working on their 6th straight postseason. Carolina's in pretty good company, right? And year in and year out, in the postseason, they've been more consistently good than those teams. Yes, they have not won a Stanley Cup. And Colorado and Florida and Vegas and Tampa Bay all have. I get it. All right, I'm going to kind of fast forward here because Chip's going to join us in about a little less than 10 minutes. Even with the scratchy play in the last month, the Hurricanes are tied for 4th in the Eastern Conference, 9th in the NHL, no matter how you slice it. They have the 5th best goal differential in the East, 8th best goal differential in the entire league. And goal differential is one of the single most meaningful statistics, basic statistics in, all of sports, but in hockey. It tells you something. They're 2nd in the Metropolitan Division. They're tied with the Devils. They're 6 points in front of Columbus if you're worried about competing for a wild card spot. I'm throwing it out there because I don't think there's anything is guaranteed. 24 games left. That's a lot of games. Hurricanes are going to have to play well to maintain their spot, ideally ahead of New Jersey. Now, let's roll it back a little bit. This was always going to be a transition year, wasn't it? Remember how we were all talking at the beginning?
It was supposed to be.
Right? There were people who said Hurricanes aren't going to make the playoffs. Those people haven't been wrong yet. I think they will be.
Yeah, Greg Wyshynski,
right? Mm-hmm. But he wasn't the only one. There were a lot of people. Anyway, this was always going to be a transition year, and then they got off to that great start. Martin Necas touched the sun, and everything went into the net, and it masked. And we were saying this from the beginning that Necas' hot streak was masking the problems that Carolina had. Mostly those problems then were in goal. But those problems have drifted out from the goal mouth at this point. And when Necas' heat check waned, all of the problems that Carolina had and were growing have kind of taken over. And Carolina hasn't had good enough goaltending, not on a consistent basis. It hasn't necessarily been bad, but it hasn't been good enough. And now what we're seeing is the blue line showing cracks. It's very possible that Brent Burns and Dmitry Orlov are cooked. Cooked. Now, maybe not. Players who get up there in age, especially Burns, who's going to be 40 next month, you go through pockets where you don't have it. But they're not the only ones who have played poorly. We haven't seen A-plus level Sebastian Aho all year.
Not at all.
Right? So we haven't seen that. We haven't seen A-plus level Andrei Svechnikov all year. We've seen better Aho than Svechnikov, but still, I would say if Sebastian were asked to self-review, like many people are in companies across these United States of America, Aho might give himself a 3 out of 5 for this year. I'll be generous.
Yeah.
I'll give him a B.
There you go.
I'll give Sebastian Aho a B for this season.
Mm-hmm.
But it ain't better than that.
No.
So there's a lot of things that have kind of showed cracks and I think Aho is a much better player than he's shown. I don't know why it hasn't been a great year for him. I mean, we're saying this, he's basically a point a game. So we should all have those problems of not being all that great and be a point a game. But we have completely lost the plot. And then you go in and you bring Mikko Rantanen and Taylor Hall in, and now things within the room dynamic change. And I think that people are being incredibly... This is the problem we have, and I'll just call it a fantasy football world that we live in sports. We just assume that you plug in, everything's fine. It's the same, because that's what happens using data. And I know the Hurricanes used data when they made the acquisition. I'm not criticizing it, but you never know how it's going to play. Ever.
Yeah.
So
it's like plaster when you put it on the wall. You still got to smooth it out. Like, it'll fill the gap, but you got to smooth it out to make it like work together. So you could put paint on it.
Spackle.
Make it pretty. Yeah.
Spackle.
Yes.
Spackle doesn't always work. Sometimes you can tell.
Right.
Maybe that's just me.
But it takes a minute.
So, in my opinion, here are the things the Canes need to upgrade. Right? Real quick. Because now you've got Rantanen and Taylor Hall here. And it's time to figure it out. You've got 9 days to figure it out. Hurricanes need to upgrade goaltending. That might be from within. That might be, hey, Freddie, or you, Piotr, one of you, somebody look like a number one goaltender. They have both looked like backups for the last, I would say 3 starts apiece. That's job one. Blue line defense. Last night wasn't really the problem. More so in Toronto. But I've just said Burns and Orlov need to get better. Shane Gostisbehere hasn't been awesome also since coming back from the injury, but I think Shane has been closer to Shane than Burns and Orloff have been to each other. And again, Slavin, world class. I think Chatfield has been, for the most part, excellent. And I think Sean Walker has been dynamite. So I think Carolina's got like 2/3 right now of an operable blue line. Scott Morrow might not be ready. Alexander Nikishin won't even be available probably until the middle of April. So with all of that, any changes would have to come via trade. So I also think they need a better version of a second center, but that probably is going to have to be an off-season acquisition. So you got 9 days. The trade deadline is sitting there next Friday. 4 more games between now and then, right? Thursday, Saturday, Sunday. No, 5 more games between now and then. I think Thursday, Saturday, Sunday, Tuesday, Thursday. We'll find out.
I have a one-timer that we didn't have time for, but it's related to this.
Sure.
Do you think that their home advantage, now that they're going to be home for a while, might help them, at least with their mindset, potentially?
They've been obviously not good on the road and much better at home, but I've seen them play like crap at home. So I wouldn't rely on anything.
It's a coin toss.
Yeah. I think you've got legitimately, and this is way different from where I was 2 weeks ago. Yelling, screaming at clouds, why are we talking about trading Mikko Rantanen? Because it might be the best thing for this franchise, not only this year, but for the future. You can't make somebody love you. It's very possible that Mikko Rantanen is just not going to be happy anywhere but Colorado. I don't think there's any guarantees anywhere. And they have 9 days to sort this out. We'll see what happens.